Well, hello there. It's me again, Dave, the Emperor of the Nerds, and this is the War, Sports, Politics, and Dragons podcast. It's season 1, episode 36. Shut up. Stop making me laugh. And the date is Friday, May 1st, 2026. Hope you had a good week. I had a pretty good week. It was nice out. Got a little bit of rest. Looks like the insomnia is a thing of the past. Thank goodness. Wow, that was a brutal month of April. I barely slept for the first 3 weeks of the month. Anyway, as always, you can follow us not just on Spotify, where we began, but on Amazon, Audible, and iHeartRadio as well. Meanwhile, if you want to help us get better tech, pay the internet bill, etc., you can do it through Cash App and Venmo. Each handle is the same, WSPD Pod. We have a Patreon page for subscribers to sponsor us, and it's as cheap as $3 a month for some of the premium content. It's patreon.com/WSP Dragons. You can get freebies plus freebies and pus. Oh, everybody wants some pus. Yay, let's have some corruption. Anyway, oh God, I can't even get through the announcements. I'm such an idiot. So check out the Patreon site, seriously. We've got some good stuff going up there. We've got more coming up today. The first 11 chapters of my first completed novel, Love's Crucible, are on there now. Chapter 11 went up Sunday. Chapter 12 is coming up in 2 more days from now. The first chapter of that novel is available there for free, so you can see it, read it, learn about Alan, the main character, and please understand, after you finish chapter 1, he's about to experience some stuff, and it's going to get interesting. It's already a little bit interesting just to find out a little bit of his backstory and why exactly he's at a party at the home of someone he only hung out with once a year and a half before. But you can get into that by reading chapter 1 and then tell me what you think. Anyway, you can become a sponsor to read the rest as it comes out and all my future works as they come out for as little as $3 a month, guys. $3, 10 cents a day, and you can support a writer who's been writing his whole adult life. Literally, since I was 18 years old, the first job I had with benefits and a retirement plan was as a sports writer, and I've been in journalism the majority of my adult life. Done a lot of other stuff also, but really, it's writing for me. And there are 29, I added them up last week, 29 novels in the pipeline at one stage of development or another. So they'll be coming out week by week for years. And it's just $3 a month. But that's enough of that. It's time for the show. You ready? Let's go. And tell you what I'm going to do. I'll tell you what I'm going to do today. Today, I'm going to do the entire podcast with a British accent. Yep. Why not? Let's do it. I don't care. Do you? No, I didn't think so either. So, today, well, we start with war usually, and I'm going to do the same thing today. Today, of course, being May the 1st, is a rather significant day in military history. For instance, let us harken back to the heady days of the middle of the American Civil War. In 1863, May 1st marked the first day of the Battle of Chancellorsville in Virginia, which pitted Union forces under General Joseph E. Hooker against the Army of Northern Virginia, representing the Confederate States of America, under Robert E. Lee. Now, those of you who are familiar with the battle are all aware of Stonewall Jackson's flank march around to the west and the ensuing disaster that he inflicted upon Hooker's forces. It was possibly the biggest Confederate victory in the entire war, but it came at an incredibly high cost in terms of key personnel. Hold on a moment, I'm going to drink a bit of this cognac. We've got the best cognac coming from the taps here, I tell you. Anyway, it was a high cost in key personnel. Yes, that's where we were. After the first day's battle, when Union forces were all but routed and driven from their original positions, driven from their camps, which were looted by the Confederates, Jackson was with a group of his assistants and advisors, or whatever his staff, and they were riding and then on foot between the lines as dusk fell, and some Confederate pickets who were guarding the front, the tip of the spear, as it were, saw him and his men skulking about in the underbrush, did not know for sure if they were Yankees or they were Confederates, and then opened fire. Jackson was hit several times. In the end, he lost his left arm, and an infection set in. After it was learned that he had to have his arm amputated, General Lee is quoted to have said, "He has lost his left arm, but I have lost my right." Jackson then took an infection and died several days later. The battle prompted the Army of Northern Virginia's move north for the second year in a row as the Confederacy invaded the Union, just as it had done in September of 1862. Those of you who remember how that 1862 campaign ended at the Battle of Sharpsburg or Antietam Creek, it seems that the Confederates tended to name battles after the nearest small town, whereas the Union had the habit, it would appear, of naming things after the nearest river. But in the case of the Battle of Gettysburg in July of 1863, it wasn't a matter of there being a river nearby to name it after. So it happened in and around that small town in south-central Pennsylvania. But realistically, one would call that eastern Pennsylvania. But after his ignominious defeat at Chancellorsville, Hooker was replaced at the end of June by one of his corps commanders, a fellow named George Meade, who I believe he was promoted on June the 30th. And then the Battle of Gettysburg began the very next morning. So he was thrust into the command of the Army of the Potomac. See, again, with the Confederates and the Union naming things after rivers or whatever. But, yes, today marks the first day of that legendary battle. In 1898, the Spanish-American War, the Battle of Manila Bay, took place today when the Asiatic Squadron of the United States Navy destroyed the Pacific Squadron of the Navy of the Kingdom of Spain after a 7-hour battle. Spain lost all 7 of the ships it had in its squadron and 381 sailors as well. The United States reported no vessel sunk and no combat deaths, although there were a few men wounded. In 1945, moving forward to a war in which Britain was actually involved, May 1st, 1945, Radio Berlin announced the death of Adolf Hitler, and there was much rejoicing. Soviet forces occupied the Reichstag and Chancellery buildings in the Nazi capital, signifying its capture, and of course the flag raising which took place is a very memorable photograph, which I believe we're going to use as the photo for today's podcast. In 1956, a different type of war or major battle was won. In the War on Illness, the polio vaccine, which was invented by Dr. Jonas Salk and revealed the previous year, which I believe won him a Nobel Prize for Medicine, was made publicly available on this date in 1956. So, very interesting, historically significant things going on there on May 1st. We won't mention that it's a big communist holiday because communists aren't people, and we're not going to talk about non-entities. Sports. We're moving along to sports now, and we're going to talk about American baseball. I've got a correction to make. First, my comment regarding the 1979 World Series, when I said last podcast that the Orioles had the home field in games 5 and 6. I was off by just 1 apiece. It turned out that the Orioles were at home for games 6 and 7 in the best-of-7 series, whereupon they proceeded quite unimpressively to shit the bed and lose both games to the Pittsburgh Pirates, thereby losing their second World Series of the 1970s to the same bloody team in 7 games in both instances. Talking about today's Orioles, the 2026 team is still screwed, hovering at, or as is the case, slightly below 500 baseball. They split a doubleheader yesterday with the last place Houston Astros of the American League Central. I'll never get used to them being in the American League. If Major League Baseball had any bloody sense at all, they would simply move the Milwaukee Brewers back into the American League where they belong and put the Astros back in the National League where they belong. But that would make too much sense. It's not like you have to worry about the pitchers hitting anymore. So just go ahead and do it and put them in the right bloody leagues. I don't get it. I just don't get it. You Americans, I don't get it. Anyway, moving to politics now. A key Supreme Court ruling about gerrymandered districts which are designed basically to pigeonhole black people into one district so that they get token-only representation has been struck down by the Supreme Court. And what's happened is Democrats have been gerrymandering the hell out of states. Now, both sides do it. I get that. But for every Texas, there are 6 Marylands. And if you want a real laugh, take a look at Maryland's 3rd congressional district right now. It was designed by Democrats. And there's a part in it where you can drive down a street and you're in the 3rd district, but the houses on opposite sides of the street are each in different districts from the 3rd and from one another. Who the hell wrote this? Who designed this? Oh, that would be the Democrats. That's right, because they don't do anything wrong when they're not busy killing babies and burning down federal buildings and bombing shit. But anyway, the SCOTUS ruling has ended the racially gerrymandered districts, and oh no, what are we going to do? We're going to have to vote for the best candidate based on their merits instead of their skin color. Oh my God. Imagine the absolute fit Martin Luther King would have thrown if he'd heard we had to choose leaders based on the content of their character. Oh, the horror. I'm sorry, I can't do the English accent anymore. I just can't. It's too hilarious. I'm going to bust out laughing any second. So anyway, yep, that's what we've had happen with the Supreme Court. Meanwhile, in other political news, up in the state of Maine, it looks like Graham Plattner is going to be the Democrat nominee for the Senate seat there. I believe he's running against Rhino Republican Susan Collins. And I guess we're going to get stuck with Susan Collins again over the guy with the Nazi tattoo. Plattner with the totem call for Death's Head tattoo on his right breast, which he has since covered up with something else. And of course, you know, the liberal apologists always talk about how he's a man who's always tried to do better. Okay, well, we're going to look real quick at that doing better thing. And I'm going to give you a little bit of analysis about just exactly how Graham Plattner has done better. Hold on a minute. We're having stupid time with the computer. Yet again. Wow, I don't even know what it did. That's impressive. Hold on. There we go. Hot dog. Wow. I'm so glad I don't have the browser set up for you to watch what I was doing on there. That was like watching a monkey making amorous advances on a football. Goodness gracious. I just don't know. Well, I don't have the meme I'm looking for with the list of Graham Plattner's various things, but I can tell you off the top of the head, he's gotten a Nazi tattoo, spoken online about how women should wear Kevlar underwear so they don't get raped, how they shouldn't drink if they don't want to get raped, asks why black people don't tip. I'm not going to comment on that one. I did a study on that. And there's a reason stereotypes exist, and it's because people live down to them. Not up to them, down to them. Oh, yeah, he's a piece of work. DUI, all kinds of stuff going on in his past. And the hits just keep on coming from the left, who got caught last week subsidizing Nazis. Now they're running them for the Senate. So they just can't seem to get away from that Nazi love thing that they have going on. It's really embarrassing and shameful, but if they had any integrity or shame, then they'd act on it. But they're too busy chopping up babies and selling the parts like it's an eBay auction. So I don't think you've got to really worry about the Democrats ever being ashamed of anything they do. The communists have no shame because they're not people. Moving to dragons, basically what we've got here is The Dragons portion of the program is going to dovetail very nicely with Anecdotal Evidence, which is a feature that I put out from time to time. Those of you who are regular listeners will recall the infamous stories from Doc's Quick Shop. I've still got several more from there. I just haven't told lately. But today in Dragons, we start with the 30-day D&D challenge, and it is now day 10 on the list. My craziest in-game experience. Now, back in the mid-90s, this would have been around 1996, I want to say, I was the gaming editorial columnist for the World of Greyhawk fan club on America Online. Those of you who are really old like me can recall the heady days of AOL when they had chat rooms and discussion boards and things like that. Nowadays, it's all social media nonsense and people flaming each other on Facebook and so on and so forth. I turned down easily a dozen opportunities to do that myself this morning because remember what Mark Twain said: never argue with stupid people. They'll just drag you down to their level and beat you with experience. Wow, this cognac is pretty good, actually. Anyway, goes down like water. You know, it's just whoosh, there it is. So, when I was the gaming editorial columnist for the World of Greyhawk fan club online, I wrote, I think it was a half a dozen things. I wrote about once a month. And one of them was called A Stupid Dwarf and a Snotty Elf. Well, I was the Snotty Elf. And in this instance, about 1987, back at Dandelion Books, which was on Dover Street, East Dover Street, the 400 block of East Dover Street. There's a Mexican tienda there now. It's not a very big building, but anyway, it was a used bookstore that sold paperbacks, and it also sold comics and gaming-related things, role-playing games, board games, you know, stuff like that. It was run by Denise and Marty Phipps. They ended up splitting up down the road, and I don't know, Marty fell off the face of the earth as far as everybody was concerned, because everybody liked Denise. She was really nice. But anyway, in the back room at this place, it was a room about, 10 by 15, and then there was the bathroom there next to it. In the back room, there was a too large for the room, table set up. And at that table, for $3, you could play all day Sunday while the store was open. So a bunch of us would get together, pay our $3, and play this or that. Played my first games of Battletech there, of Illuminati, of Traveler, of Top Secret, of the Robotech role-playing game. The list goes on and on. I played a ton of games back there on that table. But today, this day in 1987 I'm referring to, we were playing first edition Advanced Dungeons & Dragons because second edition didn't come out for another 2 years, and the store had closed by then. So we're playing D&D, and the Dungeon Master was a fellow named Glenn. And Glenn, I love Glenn to death, but as a DM, he seemed a little too adversarial. But maybe it was the die rolls. Anyway, we'll talk about that as we go on. Glenn was DMing, and the party found itself in the town of Uno. It was a one-card town, let me tell you. And Glenn told us later that he rolled a blanket charisma score for everyone in a town where we would go. And on 3d6 for the town of Uno, Glenn rolled a 5. So everybody in the town had an attitude problem, or was tactless as hell, or was really shy, or was just plain mean. Okay? So anyway, Chris was one of the other players at the table, and Chris was okay. He was an okay guy, but he wasn't a great role player, and I followed him around with my elf to keep him out of trouble. I didn't always succeed, and this particular episode is one prime example of my shortcomings as a mentor and chaperone for this dwarf, whom I think had an int of about 6. So anyway, Chris announces that I'm going to go look for a weaponsmith, because he wanted to go buy a new axe, or whatever it was he was going to do. I said, I'll go along with him. So, Elnish, the elf, accompanies this dwarf, whom we'll call him Dimbulb. And Dimbulb looks around. Well, I had seen the weaponsmith go by as we walked, and the dwarf didn't. But I didn't bother to tell the dwarf because I wanted to see how long it would take him to get frustrated that he couldn't find one. It didn't take long. He walked up to one of the townies who was walking down the street in the other direction and said, "Hey, mister, can you tell me where I can go buy new weapons?" Well, with a charisma of 5, the townie didn't exactly have the most hospitable reply. "Why should I tell you anything, stunty?" Come on, mister. I'm just trying to find a place where I can replace my axe. "I don't care. I'm not your tour guide." "Well, screw you, mister." Well, at that point, it was time to roll for initiative. And the sounds, how do I describe the sounds? The scrape and scrape of weapons being unsheathed. Then, shoo, ah! Swish, splorch, ah! As Chris's dwarf, Dimbulb, fell to the ground. Here's how it happened. Okay, so we rolled for initiative, and I rolled the highest initiative because I was an elf with a high dexterity, and, I'm good like that. Well, I decided not to engage in combat the first round because I didn't have a beef with this dude. So Chris rolled initiative, the townie rolled initiative, and the townie beat Chris. In order of initiative, it was me going first, then the townie, then Chris. Well, the townie swung his sword at Chris, and Glenn, we watched as he rolled a 20, which is, the way Glenn did it was a critical hit, pretty much automatically. Well, Glenn had a critical hit chart that was based on rolling a 30-sided die, and he had a D30 handy, and he loved his critical hit chart. Pretty sure he used a die that was broken, and I've mentioned the chi-square test before. Ain't no way Glenn's D20 would have passed the chi-square test. It was just about as biased as it could get. So anyway, he rolls on the critical hit chart and right foot. Well, the townie sliced off a piece of Chris's right foot. He lost a couple of toes in the process. Well, Chris, who then went, swung at the townie with his axe and proceeded to miss by a country mile. In the next round, again, I decided not to act because I was just watching this thing play out. And the townie took his next swing, and we watched as Glenn rolled another 20. And on the critical hit chart, this time, he rolled groin, okay? He rolled. So the sword slashed into the dwarf's right foot, and then up into his schluts, and one of the twins got separated from his brother. At which point, the dwarf, Dimbulb, collapsed in a heap on the dirt street in the fetal position, groaning in pain and bleeding everywhere. Well, at the beginning of the third combat round, my elf subdued the townie. I just went up and I sword pommel to the back of the head, and I rolled a 20. And Glenn said, "You want to roll the critical chart?" I said, "No, I'm just trying to knock him out." So the man was knocked out. Well, by the time all this happened, the town guard had noticed, and the townie, the seriously injured dwarf, and I were all arrested and put in the town's jailhouse. Our trial was the next day, thankfully, and the judge just happened to be the townie's uncle. How convenient. Well, the townie got a full, got basically, his charges were dropped. He didn't get a pardon because he would have had to have been convicted and then been pardoned by the governor or whatever. But anyway, his charges were dropped because they ruled it self-defense. And looking at the dwarf, the judge said, Mr. Dwarf, I understand that you had drawn your weapon before my nephew, Mr. Johansson had drawn his weapon, so if you drew first, then that would imply that he was defending himself. "He struck me before I got a swing at him, Your Honor," the dwarf said. Well, I don't know about all that. I do know that your sword was found next to your unconscious body. And I yelled out, yes, so is his foot, Your Honor. Who are you? I'm the other defendant in all this, Your Honor. 50 gold fine for contempt of court. Oh, really? I said. Do you know who I am, Your Honor? I asked. Now, I had actually done this to a town cop when I was a younger kid, and it worked then too. So I figured I'd give it another shot. Do you know who I am, Your Honor? Do you have any idea who you're dealing with? Do you have any clue who this dwarf and I are? Do you know anything of our reputation, of our exploits, of our accomplishments, of our good names, of our families, where we're from, where we're going? Do you know anything at all about us? Do you have any idea who you're dealing with here? No, and I don't care. I said, good. And I overpowered the bailiff near me, pulled the dwarf out of the courtroom with me, and we managed to make our escape. Somehow, with a little bit of help from the rest of the adventuring party who were, of course, watching the trial. And me being chaotic neutral, I could get away with that kind of thing. But on the way out of town, they hired a posse to go after us. And my elf was a fighter, magic user, thief. And the posse wasn't a problem after I used a stinking cloud on them. And once they basically got a whiff of that, they were pretty much done, and the posse didn't pursue us anymore. Well, we got away with it. Chris's elf our dwarf ended up getting healed up. Got his toes back. I think somebody used a regenerate spell or something. And we went about our merry way. A few sessions later, when we stopped playing that campaign, Chris says, I never should have trusted your elf in anything. And I said, shut up, man. Pick up your foot. So there's your story of the craziest in-game experience that I had from way back in 1987. That was a blast, man. The gang that we had. I'm trying to think of the names of the guys that were in the group. We had myself, my best friend at the time, Rich. There was Chris, of course. Glenn was in there from time to DM. There were two guys named Steve. One was an Asian dude, one was a black guy. And, let's see, Ralph, Carl, Denise played from time to time. And there were a few of what I call day players, people who would pop in on this or that Sunday but weren't regulars. But in terms of the regulars, it was me, Rich, Chris, Steve, Ralph, and Carl. That was the 7 of us. And, that was, and Joanna also. Joanna came in and played a good deal. But that was the guts of the group. And we, after the store closed, we all kind of fell out of touch collectively. Over time, I did run into Carl once, and we communicated briefly about 15 years later when I found him online, actually. And then Ralph, I had gotten in touch with Ralph a year or two prior to that, and we played a few games. But Steve, I was friends with into the late 90s. He moved to Illinois, got married. He's got 2 grown children now. And Rich had a couple of daughters. Not long after the bookstore closed, he went into the Army, came back out, and I don't know where he is now. But I've always been the one to stay in touch with the friends, and once I stopped maintaining the friendships kind of withered, so I guess that tells you where they were in terms of being friends, right? Yeah, they weren't. So if they want to prove me wrong, they're more than welcome to contact me, but they won't, so screw them. Anyway, fond memories are still fond memories, and I do miss those days, if not necessarily the people. Moving on to, let's see. I was going to talk a little bit about Wizards and their lame half-assed attempts to continue to court the old gamers like myself. But from what I'm hearing now is they're trying to go to a digital-only model, and they're going to basically turn D&D into Warcraft because they're trying to monetize every single player. and milk every player for a monthly subscription fee. No. We're going to have to pass on that. I'm good. I don't want to play video games. If I want to play video games, there are consoles for that. And I'm not in the mood to do it. I don't think I've ever played any D&D-esque video game on a console. So I don't intend to start now. But we're going into a new segment. I guess this would be called... I don't know. Let's call it Showtime. Let's call it Showtime, because what this is going to be about is me recommending a new movie. Or not a new movie, but me making a new recommendation of a film. And this week, I don't know if this is going to be weekly, monthly, every podcast or what, but the episode I'm recommending for this particular, or the movie I'm recommending for this particular episode is going to be I believe it was made in 2007 film starring Don Cheadle, Calling Rain Over Me. The premise is that Don is a dentist in New York City, and in his travels, he happens to notice his old college roommate existing in his periphery. He sees him walking down the street at one point and yells to him, but the man has headphones on and doesn't hear him. And then at another point, he rides by on a scooter, and again, he's got the headphones on and doesn't hear him. The third time he does manage to get his attention and talks to him, turns out his old roommate doesn't remember him at all. Well, there's a little more to the story. The college roommate is played by Adam Sandler, and he plays a fellow named Charlie Feynman. Charlie was married with 3 daughters, ages 5, 7, and 9, and they were all killed in one of the planes that crashed on 9/11. And Charlie suffered, obviously, a massive mental break and retreated into his own little world, where he plays video games, goes to record stores to buy old vinyl LPs, and pretty much just exists. Constantly renovating his kitchen and just kind of having his own paradigm. Well, Don Cheadle, whose character's name I forget right now, how do I put this? He basically tries to break down the walls that Charlie's put up and tries to, get him some help and so on and so forth. And it ends up, the cops get involved at one point, the courts get involved, and in the end, I'm not going to spoil it for you. I know that my rule on spoilers is if it happened 5 years ago, there are no such thing as spoilers anymore. But if you have not seen this film, and you want to watch Adam Sandler in a dramatic role, he absolutely hits it out of the park, I think. I think Adam Sandler did a great job in this role. Cheadle, I don't know. He does okay, but he just doesn't seem... I don't know. He seems like his character's not in control of his faculties at all times. And so it's not, maybe that's not the way to put it. Is unable to take charge of his own life. I guess that's maybe how, I don't know. But he does a good job because it's Don Cheadle. I mean, the guy could read a Chilton Auto Parts manual for 90 minutes and still make it interesting. But, I don't know. It was a good film overall. It was a very good film overall. Liv Tyler is in it. Donald Sutherland has a brief role in it. Robert Klein plays Charlie's father-in-law, I believe it is. And there are a couple of other notables in the film, but it's about 2 hours long, and it's worth your time. I would strongly recommend it. I think it's available for free on YouTube. If it's not for free on YouTube, then check Tubi, Tubi. Tubi might have it. It's a very interesting character study. Looking it up right now, yeah, it's free on Tubi. So go on to Tubi and watch it. If you already have a Netflix account, you can find it on Netflix. It's also on, you can pay to see it on certain sites, but I never recommend paying for a single movie. I think it's on Prime as well. Alan Johnson is the name of the character that Don Cheadle plays. My mistake. So, yeah, it's very good because not only does Alan help Charlie a little bit, Charlie helps Alan a little bit too without even realizing it. And there's a subplot involving an unruly dental patient that Alan Johnson has that is it's funny. It's a little messed up, but it's also kind of funny. So I would recommend you avail yourself of this film, and it will be worth the 2 hours or so that it would take you to watch it. It's definitely worth your time. So the investment will be worth it. And that is my movie recommendation of the day. On the scale of 1 to 5 stars, I give it 4 out of 5. I think it was a very good film, and I liked it. I liked it a lot. And it's funny because as soon as I watched it on Tubi, scenes from it started appearing on YouTube. I wonder why. We won't get into that. I don't feel like talking about surveillance and police states and algorithms and whatnot, because then I'll start sounding like Alex Jones, which I will use as my perfect segue to mention that man. Alex Jones, noted conspiracy theorist and talk show host, is, of course, the man who got sued for $1 billion+ and lost a court case when he said that the Sandy Hook massacre basically didn't take place back in December of, I believe it was 2012. Some of the families of the victims sued him and won and cost him a fortune. But as of today, InfoWars has begun to shut down. The satirical newspaper The Onion supposedly had bought InfoWars back on April the 20th, but a Texas appeals court has apparently granted a request to pause that deal before it takes place. The shutdown is a result, apparently, of a court-ordered liquidation of Free Speech Systems, which is InfoWars' parent company, to help pay over $1 billion in defamation judgments won by Sandy Hook families. He has indicated he will move to a new studio, app, and website while The Onion maintains it intends to turn the platform into a parody site. And The Onion had previously bid for the site, but the bid was blocked before this new attempt took place in 2026. So InfoWars will be going off the air and be replaced with The Onion. And honestly, The Onion to me isn't as funny as the Babylon Bee. The Babylon Bee is funnier, but whatever. I mean, The Onion's had some good stuff over the years. It just, I don't know, the Babylon Bee is kind of like The Onion 2.0, if that makes any sense. It's more of a, I don't know, a more evolved version, I guess you would say. Maybe that's the way to put it. I'm not sure, but and to be honest, we're running really short today. I had a couple of other things I wanted to talk about, but I didn't have time to dig into them, and I didn't want to just mention them briefly. So we're going to wrap it up today, and I want to thank you for your time. Please make sure to follow the show on Twitter. The handle is at the WSPD Podcast. More stuff is coming on the Patreon site. As I said, there's not enough time in the day. I'm more of a measure twice, cut once kind of guy when it comes to writing. And I'm doing more research than writing because I don't like doing things that I don't have some kind of a basis of knowledge in. I'm not one of these people that has rectal conversations. I don't talk out my ass. So because of that, there's definitely not enough time in the day doing a ton of reading on here, doing a ton of looking stuff up for the 1750 New World role-playing game, and for another one that I'm calling Secret Invasion, and I'm not telling you anything more about it than that, except that it's what the X-Files could have been. Okay? We'll just leave it at that. Anyway, you can help sponsor us through our Patreon page. It's patreon.com/WSPDragons. Join us there. Sponsorships start at just $3 a month. $3 a month, guys. That's it. $3. You can also help us upgrade our equipment and pay our operating expenses via Cash App and Venmo. At both of those, it's WSPD Pod. And as always, you can hear us on Spotify, where we begin. So please follow us there, as well as iHeartRadio, Audible, and Amazon. Thanks again for your time. Have a great Friday. Have a great weekend. The weather's supposed to be fairly decent here on the East Coast, so hopefully those of you that are listening on there can enjoy it. And thanks again, folks. Have a great weekend. Take care. Bye-bye.